Greetings. Welcome. You are listening to Operation Power on Black Power Media Reloaded. We're glad that you're with us, and we've got an exciting program for you today. Our program is entitled Hands Off Cuba and Commemorating the Grenadian Revolution. My name is Inez Barron, and I am the co-host along with my husband, the bold, the outspoken, the indomitable, the one, the only, the unbought, the unbossed,
Charles Barron. And as I say each week, it's a humbling honor to be on with the stunningly beautiful, with the intellectually brilliant, my wife of 43 years, Inez Barron.
Thank you. We're glad that you're here with us. Once again, this is Operation Power on Black Power Media Reloaded, coming to you each Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got an exciting program. We had another guest scheduled to come on as well, Don Rojas, but he did have a family emergency, and he's not going to be able to join us. But we've got Paul Coates, who is the publisher of the great magazine, the great publishing company that we're going to be talking about a little later as well. But right now, we want to get started with our libation. We believe that as we gather,
Don Rojas will be on by way of video.
Oh.
So he cannot be on in person because of the family emergency, but he will be on by way of video.
Great. Thank you. We're going to move now to our libation. We believe that as we gather as African people, we acknowledge our ancestors who've gone before us and who've made so many sacrifices, who have passed the torch on to us, who expect us to carry that torch on and pass it to the generations to come. So we have a libation video, which we will share with you at this time. Our technician will get it up for us, Brother Kibu Gichiru, our engineer.
Without a libation. And so for this very important presentation, we begin by the pouring of libation. We pour libation first to our first ancestor, to that hidden one who, though hidden, manifests in all things as all things, that God, goddess idea in the universe by any and all names. To our first ancestor, we pour libation. Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the first people on this planet, mothers and fathers of all mankind, flashpoint of the human family. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the ones who first gave birth to the idea of civilization, knew we would need a form of governance, and they nurtured that idea along the Nile until it reached its zenith in Kemet. There they built these gigantic monuments as evidence of that great civilization, and they carved instructions on the walls of temples and tombs for us, so we would never forget. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because over time they put together all the tenets of civilization and they took those ideas and left the continent. They were the people of the first Exodus. They left Africa and went all over the world and peopled the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they did not sit on their laurels. They continued to improve, continued to evolve, and at each point of evolution, they again would leave the continent and settle and resettle the planet. They met themselves coming and going. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time, they found themselves the object of a forced exodus when they were kidnapped, shackled, cargoed, shipped out of Africa and enslaved in diasporas around the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to the ancestors left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, left to reinvent themselves, depleted of us, human resources. But they were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global myopia that ruptured the soul of a people as it ravaged a continent. To those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time they began to remember who and what they were. Because no matter where they had been dropped off, they still retained bits and pieces of who and what they were. They retained that African core that described them. They began to remember bits and pieces of a song, They began to remember lines from a rhythm. They began to remember dances that they did in ancient times. They began to remember those ancient drum beats that they now beat out on bare skin. And so to those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to them, because they then began to teach each other. They began to resurrect and reconstruct that history and that culture. They became the new Africans wherever they were. They became the new teachers, preachers, archaeologists, the new singers, dancers, the new drummers, the new Jaliyah. They reconstructed that history and our culture and became new Africans everywhere. So to those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation to those ancestors, because they are the ones who passed that information on to us. And so we pour libation to those of you who will watch this presentation, those of you who are the recipients of that pieced together history, of that reconstructed culture. To you, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our children and those yet to be born. For they are the ones that you must teach. And you can only teach if you know the history. So to you who are learning the history and are passing on that history, and to our children who are learning that history and will pass that history on to all eternity, but they will call your name in all eternity. To our children, we pour libation. Ashe.
Ashe.
Asheo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, you are listening to or viewing us, Operation Power, a voice for Black radical politics and revolutionary change. We've got a brief video that we want to share with you, which gives you a little bit of information about Operation Power and our history and our accomplishments in some small measure.
Operation Power stands for people organizing and working for empowerment and respect.
Operation Power is a grassroots social justice organization founded by local community stakeholders, which includes activists, organizers, and leaders who understand that the system as it is currently structured is destroying us and our communities.
The system, the capitalist system, one that promotes human greed over human need, one that promotes profit over people, needs to be dismantled. These local community organizers recognize capitalism needs to be destroyed and replaced with socialism.
Operation Power was founded in 1997 with the understanding that uprooting capitalism needs to begin locally. Operation Power understood that our communities are the perfect vehicle to dismantle this parasitic capitalist system brick by brick, and the economic, political, and cultural institutions and other systems in place in our local community infrastructure. Whether it's the local school board, community board, city council, state assembly, all represents mechanisms to control the destiny of our people.
In 1997, Operation Power launched the campaign Charles Barron for City Council that would lead to over 20 years of radical changes in the East New York community. These changes included over 20,000 units of housing affordable to our community, 3 $88 million schools, over $110 million secured and allocated for community parks, millions secured for library upgrades, and another $42 million for the construction of a new library. Thank you so much. A little snippet, a little brief summary of what we've been able to do through Operation Power, concentrated and focused here in East New York. And we do want to recommend some books for your reading pleasure. The first one is entitled Operation Power. Is entitled Speaking Truth to Power, and it's about Operation Power's work, the work we've done in our community, and it is written by none other than Charles Barron, and it is published by Black Classic Press. The next one is entitled It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. It's a great analysis of capitalism and its tentacles, and it's written by Malika Jabali. The next is one that is, in fact, a novel. It's entitled Black Rising, It is written by Kevin Barron, and it is a page turner. It is a part of a trilogy, and the second book in the trilogy is called Black Rising, Home and Abroad, and it continues the theme and the characters that were presented in the first part of the first book of the trilogy, and the last book is entitled The Threat by Kevin Barron. We encourage you to reach out. All of these books are available online through Barnes and Noble. Well, once again, we're here. We're ready to talk about our program. Our guest is there, but we're going to start first with looking at commemorating the Grenadian Revolution. The revolution began in March the 13th. Last week was the anniversary, and it was 1979
and ended in 1983 with the invasion of America. Now, this tiny little island of Grenada, 110,000 people. The chief produce was nutmeg, the spice island, and they had coffee beans and they had cocoa beans and other kinds of spices. Grenada decided that they don't no longer want to be under the dictatorship of Eric Gary, who was supported originally by the people, and then he became corrupt, and then America controlled him. And so there was a revolution when he went out of town. By the way, it was one of the peaceful revolution. I think only one or two people died in that revolution, but that's the moment of the change. Prior to that, they had this gang called the Mongoose Gang, you know, like the Savak police in Iran and Tonton Maku and in Haiti under P.O.W.E.R. They always have a gang of terrorists to terrorize the people. But Maurice Bishop and the Neutral Movement were able to take control of the government when Eric Gary was out of town. And what did they do? They had literacy rate. They brought that down. The production of developing the nutmeg, they process it themselves instead of letting England buy the nutmeg, the seed, and then process it and sell the nutmeg back to Grenada for more than what they had to pay for, more than what the seed was. So this revolution was one of the highlights of the Caribbean island, and they took on imperialism. They took on the colonial imperialist powers of America. Big bullies, brought in navies and planes. They had a people's militia, a people's army. They didn't have no air force. They didn't have no boats or nothing like that. So Ronald Reagan really should be ashamed and disgusted with himself, but I'm sure he's not. So the Grenadian people are resilient people. They fought back. The Cuban workers were there. I happened to visit Grenada with 18 young people from the House of the Lord Church. Brother Adiemi Bandelli of the National Black United Front's international section was one of the first. Our organization under his leadership, and Reverend Herbert Daughtry was the first to recognize the Grenadian Revolution here in America and organized with others a speech that you will see portions of that Maurice Bishop made at Hunter College, 3,000 people. So we're going to let you look at a few clips of that. And then Don Rojas, who we did want to have here, couldn't be here, and we'll have him by way of a video he had done a while ago, and you'll see him. Then we're going to bring on Brother Paul Coates, because Cuba and Grenada, Castro and Maurice Bishop were tight, and Maurice Bishop loved Malcolm X too. And ironically, Maurice Bishop was killed and he was 39, and Malcolm was 39, and Martin was 39. So Maurice Bishop in his own words. As we work
Having some technical difficulties, I'll be right back.
Okay. And as he goes about getting the film together, Maurice Bishop, along with people like Michael Manley of Jamaica and Walter Rodney of Guyana, these were revolutionaries at that time in that region that was very, very instrumental and turning the tide of colonialism and American imperialism. And the Grenadian people were a resilient people, regardless of all of the power of America. I remember writing a letter to the president because they showed some satellite photos of the Grenadian airport where the Cuban workers were. And not only did they give workers, they gave doctors and engineers. The Cuban workers, we met them when I brought the young people there. We met with Maurice Bishop and Carifta Cottages, and we met with the top level members of government. The average age of the government was 33, and we were honored to meet with them. But they took these pictures and put them in the newspapers in America to make it look all dramatic. Satellite photos. I remember writing a letter to the president, and I said, President Reagan, you didn't need to waste your money on satellite photos. I took the same pictures with a little Instamatic camera because there is no drama like that. Those same pictures of the airport, I took those pictures as well. The airport was one of the airports, the fifth, sixth largest airport in the Caribbean, because they had a small airport where they couldn't do international trade because the airport wasn't big enough. So now they wanted that for trade so that bigger planes can land. We had to get on the Liat plane. That was being land in Barbados, and we had to go from Barbados, and everybody had to run for the Liat. I don't care if you had a reservation or not. You better hurry up and get there. That seat's going to be taken. So that little plane had, what is it, St. Pauline's or Pauline's Airport? They were able to do that. So we got to Grenada, and what an experience. Bishop.
There's an interesting one that we saw very recently in a secret report of the State Department. I want to tell you about that one, so you can reflect on that one. That secret report made this point, that Grenada is different to Cuba and Nicaragua. And the Grenadian Revolution is in one sense even worse, I'm using their language, than the Cuban and Nicaraguan revolutions, because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United States.
It's more to it. Ain't more, isn't it more to it?
And said that also made us very dangerous.
Very large.
And that is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. And if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the United States.
I was very fortunate to be at that rally. 3,000 people. When he said that, oh man, the place went wild. The spirit in there, because, you know, it's not too often that you see such young, dynamic people that take on an imperialist monster like America and be successful. And it's only the internal contradictions that led to the death of Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord, and Maurice Bishop had their internal conflicts. That's why we try to encourage people to learn from the Grenadian Revolution. A whole revolution was thwarted because of that internal dynamics that led to America using some justification. They said that their medical students were in danger, and Bernard Cord and General Austin, they had set up Maurice Bishop and his leadership, and I mean, fired on them, lined them up, and shot them down. What could have been so bad, Ines?
Just wanted to share with you part of the goal of the Revolution was to make sure that they improved the infrastructure of the country, and they had a particular emphasis on improving the literacy rate. And they appointed Sister Jacqueline Kreft as the head of the education department. And I just want to share some quotes that she shared that she had. Comrades, ever since our party was formed in March of 1973, high upon our list of priorities has been the transformation of this twisted education system that we inherited from colonialism and from Gary. We are determined to change a system which so powerfully excluded the interests of the mass of our people, and which also wove webs of lies and fear and alienation and irrelevant around our country, around our children's minds, whether it was Little Miss Muffet or Cow Jumped Over the Moon, William the Conqueror, or the so-called discoveries of Christopher Columbus in the New World. Right from the beginning of our struggle, we called for an education system which not only services all our people in secondary schools, which they would freely open the doors to all of our people without the constraint of fees, but also a curriculum which would eliminate the absurdity from our classrooms and focus our children's minds upon their own island, their own wealth, soil, and crops, their own solution to the problems that surround them. For too long, we have been brainwashed to think that only Europe and America had healthy answers. So they were talking about self-determination, setting it up so that their own children could see their worth and move forward with that.
Now we have a clip from Brother Don Rojas. Brother Don Rojas was the press secretary for Maurice Bishop, traveled all over the world with him. They were close friends. And for us, he also was a part of our Black United Front organizing, helped us, Segundo, he was Segun Shabaka for our Black News paper that they produced. So he was helpful for us, and the press secretary of Maurice Bishop almost lost his life. He had to run for his life. They were trying to kill him, but he got out of Grenada. Thank God, he and his family.
My name is Don Rojas. I am a Caribbean man who lives in the United States at this current time in my life. I worked and lived in Grenada for 4 years, from 1979 to 1983. And in those years, I worked in 2 different capacities for the People's Revolutionary Government. First was to be the editor of the Free West Indian newspaper, which at the time was the official national newspaper of the Grenadian Revolution. And then in the second 2 years, I worked as Maurice Bishop's press secretary, which meant that I traveled around the world with him, organized press events and press interviews, helped to draft some of his speeches. We went to many countries in Europe, Africa, Asia, in those 2 years. And I got to work with Maurice Bishop, you might say up close and personal, and was able to observe his extraordinary qualities as a human being and as a political leader. And in that period of time, I could tell you that Maurice, along with the colleagues who were close to him and who traveled with him, in addition to those who provided support back home, collectively were able to project the image of the Grenadian Revolution, the agenda, the objectives, the purposes.
Dr. Terzi can be assured, as always, that the people of Palestine and their sole authentic representatives, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, will always have the firm support of the fraternal people of Grenada.
Bishop was an extraordinary person in so many ways. He was a very intelligent man. He had a heart of gold. He had a very generous, loving spirit about him. Of course, he had superb oratorical skills. that made him one of the greatest public speakers of his time. And in addition to his skills as a political leader, he was a brother who did not have any kind of airs about him. He did not worship at the altar of power. He did not. He was not a pompous person like so many political leaders tend to become once they are in office. He was a very down-to-earth brother with a very keen sense of humor. Loved to play cards and have a good time and have a drink while socializing with friends and colleagues. And I saw him in that capacity wherever we visited, whatever country we visited. I also saw him sit down and negotiate various aspects of cooperation with the leaders of some of the most powerful countries in the world. In conducting himself in those high-level delegations, in high-level meetings, he was never in awe of the power that those men and women controlled in their own countries. He had the courage, the temerity, and the ability to be able to talk to them at the level of being almost at the level of equals. And I found that to be extremely impressive.
The South African racists who have spent so much time inventing all sorts of ingenious ways of oppressing the people of South Africa, the black majority, who have spent so much time in ensuring that those people are not able to reclaim their true patrimony. They are now discovering that in common with all of the national liberation movements around the world that are forced to move to the highest stage of the struggle, that the African National Congress is also willing to make that step.
There you have it. Now, Maurice Bishop, like Michael Manley, like Thomas Sankara, like all of these great leaders, they took on this powerful, powerful empire called America. And they liberated their people, and they left seeds of revolution for the young to follow. So we will always honor, respect, and appreciate. I'm just so glad I had an opportunity to meet with him. And when we were in Carifta Cottages, he was very busy. America's about to attack him. And I was asking Peggy Nesfield, who was one of his aides, could the bishop just stop by for 5 minutes to see the 17 children I brought from Brooklyn, Reverend Daughtry's church? And she said he's busy. Next thing I know, she called me, get the children ready. Bishop's coming. He sat with us for 45 minutes. Very memorable. Well, we're going to get to Cuba. You know what's going on in the world now with the attack on Iran and the attack on Venezuela and the bombing of Nigeria. All of this is because we're experiencing the birth pains of a new world order, the dying of the declining of the American empire, and the dollar, the currency war that's going on. So as America declines, it is wounded and dangerous. So they pick on the tiny island of Cuba. But Cuba is a resilient people. For 60 years, they survived the blockade. For 60 years, they survived America threatening any other country. For dealing with Cuba, you would lose American aid. They tried to kill Fidel Castro thousands of times, but guess what? He died on his own terms. And they tried to get Fidel to give back Assata Shakur.
And who did that?
because she was a revolutionary who escaped the clutches of the colonial pigs of the power structure in America's jail and escaped to Cuba. She died on her own terms. Oh, she much rather would have been in America, but at least she didn't die in the dungeons of the American jail system. So we are eternally grateful to Cuba. When Africa called, Cuba answered. There would be no Angola without Cuba. Nelson Mandela and all of the strugglers in South Africa, Mangaliso Sobukwe, all of them, Cuba was there for them. And Cuba sent technicians, and the Congo, my man Che Guevara went to the Congo to help the Congolese out. So we are grateful. Inez and I went to Cuba. And when we went to the medical center, a medical school, 2 students from East New York, Brooklyn, were getting a free tuition at the medical school in Cuba. When I was in the Black Panther Party, they had the Venceremos Brigade, went to Cuba to cut sugarcane. Cuba had its revolution, very principles all over the world. Cuban soldiers, Cuban doctors, Cubans died, spilt their blood all over the world. And the famous meeting of Castro and Malcolm X in the Teresa Hotel in Harlem, Muhammad Ali met Castro. So we now have to answer the call. When Africa called, Cuba answered. Now Cuba's calling. And African people from all over the world should answer. One brother did answer, and that was Paul Coates, who is with us now. And we just honored to have him on. And I got to say, also, he's something personal here, man. He helped me print my book. So that's printed up our book anytime I want more copies. And I'm talking about qualitative copies of the book. But Paul came back from Cuba about a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, and he's here to let us know what his experiences were in Cuba. Paul, welcome to our program.
Sister Inez, you are at the roots. I'm going to greet you first.
Thank you. Greetings. Good to see you.
Same. Brother Charles, always my pleasure, brother. Always my pleasure. I enjoyed really the presentation on Maurice Bishop, especially because he is one of my heroes.
Oh, wow.
And he's, I mean, he really, really is. I think you did a tremendous job of placing Maurice Bishop in the context of the freedom fighter that he was, and Don Rojas, who, worked with Bishop and like you say, fortunately lived.
Right.
We're just a treasure for him to be able to recall. So thank you so much for that. And I'm just glad to be here this evening so we can talk about Cuba. Not just talk about Cuba, but talk about what we can do about Cuba. Because everything that you said about our debt to Cuba, everything you said is 100% on point. We owe a tremendous debt. We owe a tremendous debt to Cuba, and it's a debt that's got to be paid. I mean, and we're here to do it. And so, please, I know I'm talking a lot of words, but I want to make sure I don't forget this. Let me say this: LetCubaLive.info. 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 For people who are tuning into the program, for people that want to support Cuba, one of the ways that our comrade Rosemary Mealy has outlined for us is that we support Cuba by helping purchase generators, by making donations to purchase generators, by making donations to purchase solar panels.
There you
and
go.
All of these are simple things, and it doesn't require a lot of money. Simple things to do. We can donate $5, $10, whatever it is, because people around the country and the world are engaged in helping the people of Cuba. So it's us. It's an opportunity for us to do the payback, and it's an opportunity for us to be united with other people around the world who are conscious of the inhumanity of this, particularly this administration, against the people with that inhumanity is being applied against the people of Cuba. And as you cited, I mean, it's being applied around the world, whether it's the Congo, whether it's Iran, whether it's Gaza. It's the same humanity. It's just a different tactic, but it shows up as evil wherever we look at it. And we have a chance. We have an opportunity. We have a responsibility. We are called. We are really, really called to do our part to slay that evil. And we can slay that evil. We can slay that evil by going against that evil. Something as simple as buying a generator, something as simple as donating for a solar cell. We have that responsibility. We have to act on it. So I want to call people into that space. Let Cuba live.info. Let Cuba live.info. And I got it, brother.
Well, great entree into the cook.
Brother Paul, we want to make sure we let people know that, yes, you are the publisher of Black Classic Press, and there are a wealth of books that you have published talking about our condition, our history, our culture, and our greatness. And we'd encourage people to do that. As we talk about Cuba, we talk about the fact that, yes, they have sent troops, they have sent concrete material, they have sent people, they've sent supplies, they've sent humanitarian aid to all of those areas and those countries that were fighting for liberation. And when they left, there was no condition about any of the resources of the countries where they provided those services being in any way sent to Cuba or having Cuba capitalize on that or exploit that. They left, they said when they left and came back, all they brought back were the remains, the bodies of those soldiers who had died. So they did not exploit these nations. We talk about humanity. They offered to send resources when there was Katrina. They would have been there before the United States got there 3, 4, 5 days later, but the United States rejected that. So we understand it's a great humanity of the Cuban people. And when they were under those hard times, they called it the special times, the special time. So they found a way to be positive about that.
So Paul, tell us about your trip.
Well, let me begin by saying, I went with a group of 21 people. It was a delegation that we put together to go to the Cuban Book Festival. The Cuban Book Festival was postponed because, as we all know, the United States shut down the oil and shut down the power, and consequently, the Cubans did not have enough fuel to equip the buses that brought people from the countryside into the book festival. That book festival hosts 1 million people. It positions itself in 3 cities on that small island, and 1 million people attend that book festival. I mean, it's amazing. This year they couldn't do it. But so what we did was we did a pivot. We did a deep dive into Cuba and particularly Afro-Cuba, okay? The traditions, the cultural work that comes out, whether it's the art. We visited artists, we visited dancers, we visited places of worship and practice in the Santeria. We visited all of these places, and one place we visited was a community center, Colombo, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, forgive me. But we visited a community center in which it was an intergenerational experience because there were young kids there, maybe the age of 5, 6 on up, to elders who were there. And those elders, some of those elders had been a part of the fighters who had gone to Cuba. So there were men, as we can imagine, who were part of those fighters, and there were women who had been, a part of those fighters. And I don't know why I hadn't conceived that. I knew that the fight, they sent what is it, about almost 300, I think about 350, almost 360,000 troops from Cuba to Angola to fight the South Africans and the other traders that were there. And that went on for a period of about 11 years. But I don't know why I was not seeing women as going, but a significant amount of those troops were women. And we had the opportunity to talk with the men and talk with the women who were serving in the community center, mentoring the young kids who were there. So it was a wonderful intergenerational experience. I had the opportunity to travel. There were 8 of us from my family to travel. Among that 21, I had my 2 of my grandchildren, 2 of my daughters, and 1 of my sons, and then me and my wife and my daughter-in-law. So we had a great experience. And you know, I encourage people. Inez, I encourage people to go to Cuba and go to Cuba as frequently as they can, which is still legal. And, you know, of course, a lot of people say, you went to Cuba, can you do that? Of course you can. You know, you can go, you can actually live in Cuba as long as you have a Cuban visa. You can be there as long as you want to be there. You know, the United States does not have a time that you have to come back out of Cuba that I'm aware of. But the point that I'm saying, once my grandkids got on the floor, I remember one of them telling me, one of my grandsons telling me, Granddad, you really have to be here and witness this in person. And what he was speaking of is, as you guys know, like Cuba, you know, like I think you did part of this quote, Charles, or led to it. They were asking Castro about Cubans being in Africa. He said, no, Africa is in Cuba. You know, so 70% of that population is African.
Wow.
You know, at least 70% of it, and probably even more because, of course, the Cuban population is mixed. You know, but that many natives from Africa were stolen and taken to Cuba. If you and I can't remember the number, but the point is, more Africans went to Cuba than came to this country. See, people are astounded. You know, it's only like 83,000 Black people came to this country straight from the islands and straight from the continent. People think that 400, 500,000. You had a small population of Black folks that actually came to this country. You had more go to the South America, more go to Cuba. You know, the Spanish did more. That's another story. The point is, the real point is that there are so many African retentions, so many, as you guys know, so many African cultures, that what my grandson was saying is true. When you get off that plane, it hits you. It hits you. This is just like home. Yes, they're speaking Spanish and we speak English, but these folks, you know, I go and I see someone looks like you, Charles. I go and I see Inez. I see somebody that looks like me. We are so close. And it's no wonder that Asada would be embraced. It's no wonder that Robert Williams would be embraced. It's no wonder that people like Huey Newton, it's no wonder that people like Eldridge Cleaver and so many other liberation fighters would be embraced. And here is the thing, John. Those are the people that went to Cuba. You know, like I know from being in the Panther Party, you know, if you didn't go to Cuba, you always thought about going to Cuba. You know, Cuba was always the exit. That was always the exit plan. And just like you pointed out about the Cubans not giving up Asada, we knew that the Cubans would put their arms around us. We knew that they would embrace us and never let us go. We knew that there was safety. Those 90 miles off the coast of this country, there was safety. We didn't have to worry about it. Malcolm knew that when he invited Castro to the Teresa Hotel.
Right, that's right.
You know, he knew what the deal was, and Castro knew what the deal was, and everyone got to see what the deal was when he was embraced by Harlem. You know,
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we do publish a book on that, Fidel and Malcolm, and that's by our comrade Rosemary Mealy.
Oh, right. That's
Yes,
right.
yes,
That's
yes,
right.
yes.
So we do publish that book.
Well, Paul, this is so good because of who you are and what you've experienced in the party and what you experienced in your publishing thing. But what's deep? We live in, as I've been saying, and this is like the birth pains of a new world order. And the American empire is declining. The American dollar is declining.
Okay.
Part of the reason why they're going at Cuba and Venezuela is because of China.
Mhm.
China is, elevating to one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful. So they figured if they could stop the oil from Venezuela going to Cuba, and if they could stop the oil in Venezuela from going to China and Russia, but particularly China, that might stall some of China's world global power and the changing, because we're moving now to a multilateral world instead of a unilateral world, just America. What did you see in the Cuban people? Because when we went, they were struggling, but there's a resilience about the Cuban people. What did you pick up on that?
You are so right. Times are harder now than they were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
In Cuba, the Cuban people are aware that times are hard. They're aware that changes are going to come. You don't see among the Cuban people necessarily that they know what those changes are going to be, but they expect those changes to come from within, like any free people would do. They expect to make those changes themselves and not be dominated or enslaved by people from this country or any place in the world that would want to return them to the enslavement that they've fought against for the last couple of 100 years, because they've fought. Cuba's consistently, people think about Fidel as being the leader of the revolution. He was the leader of a movement that extended over hundreds of years. Cuba's fought back and forth for their freedom, always determined that they would be free. And that is what you're speaking of, and that's what I found. I found this this resistance in the face of really, really tough times. I'm talking about people not being able to feed their children, people not, the fortunate people who had jobs not being able to get to work because they lived on one side of the island and there was no bus transportation, there was no gas, but even for the motorcycles to go back and forth across. These people were still resistant and resilient. I can't say they weren't depressed. I'll tell you, I came back from Cuba and it took me the better part of a week before I could think about Cuba without crying. It's like it wasn't like I was in pain myself. I was feeling the pain of my brothers and my sisters. And these were brothers and sisters, I felt, who were strong. They didn't need my tears.
As you
they
say,
needed me to help them let Cuba live.
Right.
They needed that kind of action. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's what I came back with.
Right. That kind of determination and the resistance of the indigenous, the people who were there, the Cubans who were there. And we're going to ask Cairo if you put that up again, letcubalive.org, so that you can make sure that they make an expression, give support, find out what's happening. And it's as you're saying, it's more than just the emotion. We've got to take a stand. We've got to take a position. There are actions that are being planned. And when we were in the New York City Council, we were able to support Sister Mealy and others who have been fighting for so long with Cuba. And we were able to get the New York City Council to, in fact, pass a resolution talking about ending the sanctions against Cuba. So
Yeah.
we got to find those ways to make
Yeah.
concrete actions, not sit on the side, get involved. As you're saying, go visit Cuba, see what's
Yeah.
going on, but take some concrete action to support Cuba, who for all these decades has supported Black people all across the world in so many dimensions, in so many ways, concrete, tangible ways. We've got to make sure that we get people to take a stand, participate in a demonstration, write a letter, call your congressperson, call your senator, and let them know that you want them to have the United States end these sanctions against Cuba.
And take Cuba off the terrorist list.
That's right.
How can a terrorist nation like the American government put somebody on a terrorist list? And then, by the way, Brother Kalonji Changa, who was one of the founders of Black Power Media Reloaded, said right on to Paul Coates. So he gave you some big accolades. Salute to Brother Paul
Thank
Coates.
you. Thank you.
That's what he
Thank
said.
you, Brother Kalonji. Thank you.
Yeah. So we definitely did that legislatively, but we got to really unite our people, because sometimes our people, well, I don't have nothing to do with Cuba. What does that mean? They don't understand. If Cuba goes down, we're going to have a challenge staying up.
Yeah. No, you're right, Charles. One of the things I came back with was, let me tell you, I brought letters back from Cuba, okay? And these were from little school children. And you know where they were going? They were going to Pittsburgh, because in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh is a sister city, at least I was told this, of Havana, okay? And in that city, there are school children that write back and forth. And so I brought a packet of letters back for those children, and I was inspired by that. I also brought back the resolve that as I said earlier, I'd get as many people to go to Cuba as I could, or I would encourage as many people to go to Cuba as I could. And I'm encouraging, out of this, there are two things that I really want to stress: letcubalive.info, but also encourage people to go to Cuba, to schedule trips to Cuba now, because we can't live inside of a bubble of certainty that the United States is going to defeat the Cuban people. I would tell people, don't ever bet against Cuba.
That's right. That's right.
Just don't do it. The odds are not that good. Don't do that. If you got money, I tell you, go ahead and bet and get the odds on Cuba's side.
That's right.
So we have to live our lives like that. We have to organize people. As far as I'm concerned, we have to organize people. Cuba lives not only on the currency of the people that come into Cuba, they live on the friendship that those people bring in, because they know especially when Black Americans come down there, that we're coming in friendship. We're coming to be a part of that experience and to share in that experience as human beings. We've come to be a part of that humanity. So in addition to letcubalive.info, I am really encouraging people to organize and go to Cuba. Go to Cuba as individuals, go to Cuba as groups. And if anyone needs any help with that, we have some wonderful facilitators.
Oh, great.
That can make the whole thing happen from A to Z. So coming back, I have 3 folks that are taking groups down at this point.
Wow.
One of them is our friend Tony Browder.
Oh, Browder. Yeah.
He's going down in January. I will be going back down in February. And that's the way we have to think. We have to think, we have to first of all believe that Cuba is going to be free in February, that there will be an experience that we can plug into in February. It's going to be, and that's what the Cubans want. There are a number of people in Cuba now, that are in support of Cuba, because there are large demonstrations from around the world. There's a caravan that over the next couple of days, more and more people will come into Cuba, bringing support and showing their solidarity with the Cuban people.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's where I was going next. I didn't know you were a mind reader too. I didn't know that, Paul. You didn't tell me.
Oh, yeah, I can do that, man.
But see, this is what's deep. Countries are defying America. because the empire is declining, the dollar is declining.
Mhm.
And you saw what happened in the Strait of Hormuz. You know, they asked Europe
That's right.
to help. They said no. That's
Mhm.
we ain't getting down with that. And
Mhm.
also the rise of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Cuba is a part of the BRICS group. There's about 24 nations now. Perhaps it still has to be worked out, but there's some nations like BRICS is saying later for the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, later for the World Bank, later for the American dollar, we're going to use our own currency in trading. And then there's some countries that are actually defying America and trying to get some aid to Cuba.
Yeah, you helped me with something because I didn't know Cuba was a part of BRICS, and that is a really, you know, there is a frustration because so many, I shouldn't say so many, but a number of countries that are so aligned with Cuba and have been historically aligned with Cuba are taking the back seat now. You know, they're not necessarily betting against Cuba, but they're saying, I'm not taking a chance on getting hit.
Right.
And this happens, like, as you know, countries, particularly in the Caribbean, that have depended on Cuban expertise and aid. Inez, you were pointing out how Cuba wanted to send the doctors here. Well, Cuba has sent doctors, as we all know, into almost every Caribbean country that there is. Many of the countries in Africa, Cuba has sent doctors into. But this country has forced many of them to force out Cuba, to cause Cuban doctors that they need. They desperately need. The United States is not going to send doctors in there without charging whatever. They have no plan for that. But the Cuban doctors that Cuba has sent literally around the world, and significantly, they haven't attached it to raping the country. This is another point you made, Inez, about how when they went into Africa, they didn't say, well, we're going to go in, but we need some of your diamonds. We need some of your oil. We need some of your gold. They didn't go in. They went in and responded to a call of freedom and liberation. And that's why they went in. So it's sad on the one hand to see so many countries abandon the Caribbean countries, Black folks, abandon Cuba after they know Cuba stood up for them. And Charles, goes back to what you're saying. It's why we can't abandon Cuba.
That's right.
You know, we can't abandon Cuba. We have to open our arms and stretch them and gather Cuba and its humanity close to us. And we have to do everything in our power. Everything we're called to do everything in our power to speak up for Cuba.
Well, thank you so much. We're down to our last 2 minutes. I want to thank you so much, Brother Paul, for your history and our liberation movement. And you keep pushing strong and pushing hard. And we're just so proud and so honored to be affiliated with you and be a friend of yours and a comrade in struggle. But
I am proud to be affiliated with this power couple, this Black liberation power couple, who know how to walk step in step. You know what I mean? While they walk hand in hand, they know how to coordinate those steps too and do that wonderful dance of liberation. So look, I'm glad to be with you guys. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And if people are interested in going with the great Tony Browder, who has organized so many inspirational, educational trips to the motherland, if people are interested in that, they would be able to contact him.
They can contact Tony. They can go online because he has a strong presence online. But they can also reach out to Paul Coates at Black Classic Press as well, you know, and we will hook them up. Because there are other trips. I didn't mention, I know we get time. Eddie Conway's wife, Eddie has transitioned. But his wife has agreed to take a group down. So there are going to be several groups going down. But they can reach out to me at Black Classic Press and I'll hook them up.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Somebody said thank you and Viva Cuba, Viva la Revolution. And someone else said, I recognize that's Paul Coates. His voice is distinguishable. I recognize him by voice.
Oh, wow. I got that one.
People I recognize. That's
Thank
from
you.
the Empress.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. We've run out of time, Paul.
Thank
We
you.
gotta have you back again.
Thank you.
Our
Let's
love
do it.
and regards to your queen.
That's right.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
talk about a power couple.
Yes.
Huh? Matter of fact, she edited my book. So
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great one.
have a great one. And as we
Peace.
say each and every week, the truth shall set you free, and power is the great equalizer. Black power.
Black power.